Close your eyes. Think about Europe in the 1300s. It was a busy world, full of huge cities, powerful kingdoms, and rigid social rules. But soon, this vibrant world would face an invisible enemy. An enemy so powerful that it would kill up to 50 million people. This is the story of the Black Death. We will use the power of AI to show the real, terrifying horror of what it was like to live through the greatest catastrophe in human history. The silent killer started its journey thousands of miles away along the famous Silk Route. The bacterium Yersinia pestis was not carried by travelers or soldiers. Instead, it was carried by small, dark, and unwelcome passengers, rats and fleas. The disease was passed from rat to rat, but when a rat died, the flea needed a new host. That host became the human. The flea would bite a person, and the bacteria would be quickly injected. The plague officially reached Europe's doorstep through conflict, specifically the horrifying siege of Kappa in 1347. The attacking Mongol forces, dying from the sickness, catapulting infected corpses over the city walls into the besieged city. These barbaric acts brought the sickness into the port. From there, the plague hitched a ride on merchant ships, sailing straight into the densely packed and utterly unsanitary port cities of Italy and beyond. The clock was ticking, and no one knew it. To truly understand the horror, we must understand the mechanism. The plague primarily manifested in three devastating forms, each one deadly, but spread in different ways. First, bubonic plague. This was the most common type. As we said, it spread through the flea bite. The bacteria would enter the body and travel to the nearest lymph node. Second, septicemic plague. This form was the fastest killer. Here, the bacteria did not stop at the lymph node. It entered the bloodstream directly. It caused mass internal bleeding and tissue death. And third, pneumonic plague. This was the most terrifying because it was airborne. It went straight to the lungs, spread by a simple cough or sneeze. This form could turn entire communities into viral incubators in just days, without the need for a single rat or flea. The symptoms were agonizing and sweet. The defining sign, the horror that gave the disease its name, were the buboes. These were violently swollen lymph nodes, ranging from the size of a walnut to that of an orange, usually appearing in the groin, armpit, or neck. They were so painful that victims screamed just from the pressure. The victim would suffer from a high, burning fever, intense vomiting, and body aches. For the septicemic form, the massive internal bleeding would cause the skin, especially on the fingers and nose, to turn black and die. And this is how the term Black Death was truly born. Most victims rarely lasted longer than 4 days from the first symptom. The swiftness of the deaths broke people's will. Survival was a miracle, and it was random. Medieval medicine was utterly useless against this invisible enemy. Doctors based their practices on the ancient for humorous theory, believing the cure lay in placing the fluids in the body. They tried useless procedures like intense bloodletting or attaching leeches to the infected areas, all of which often made the patients worse. The most widely accepted, yet completely wrong, belief was that the plague was caused by miasma, meaning bad air. Doctors believed a foul, corrupting smell was poisoning the atmosphere. Their only defense was to burn strong-smelling aromatic herbs inside homes and in the streets to try and overpower the bad air. This era of desperation gave rise to an iconic figure of terror, the plague doctor. They wore a long, dark coat, heavy gloves, and a hood. But their most famous feature was the mask with a long, bird-like beak. This beak was packed with aromatic herbs, an attempt to filter the bad air they believed was causing the sickness. Their job, however, was rarely to cure. They were mostly employed to count the dead and record ways. They were a terrifying symbol of a society that had lost all hope. The sheer, overwhelming scale of death dissolved the social contract that held communities together. Family members, terrified of contagion, abandoned one another. Priests refused to administer last rites. The dead bodies began to stack up faster than they could be buried. Cities were forced to dig huge plague pits. Massive trenches where countless bodies were simply piled together. Society reacted into extremely opposite ways. One group turned to extreme faiths, believing the plague was God's punishment. This gave rise to the Flagellants, groups who walked from town to town, publicly weeping themselves to atone for humanity sins. On the other hand, many people simply gave up hope, deciding to live for the moment. They engaged in reckless drinking, feasting, and pleasure, believing they would die tomorrow anyway. This culture of fear also caused people to look for someone to blame. The desperate population turned on the easiest targets, minorities and foreigners. The Jewish community was tragically and wrongly accused of poisoning the West, leading to waves of terrifying persecution and massacres across Europe. The theme of death, known as the Dance Macabre, the Dance of Death, became a core focus of art and culture, showing that death claimed everyone, from the king to the peasant. When the plague finally subsided in 1343, Europe was a fundamentally and forever changed place. Up to 60% of the population had been wiped out. Yet the greatest irony is that the death of millions brought unprecedented opportunity for the people who survived. The massive labor shortage meant that the surviving peasants and workers were now extremely valuable. Feudal lords had to desperately compete for labor, forcing them to offer higher wages, better food, and crucially improved living conditions for the poor. The old system of feudalism was dying because the workers finally had power. This profound socioeconomic shift was the true beginning of the end of the medieval era. The Black Death was not merely a disease, it was the brutal catalyst that forced a complete societal and intellectual reset. It sparked widespread religious skepticism, accelerated social mobility, and unknowingly set the stage for the era of rational thought and discovery that would soon follow, the Renaissance. The horror of the plague truly paved the way for the rebirth of Europe. The medieval world was a place of extreme danger. If you survived the Black Death, you were living in a new, changed world. But could you survive just 24 hours in the medieval world? Find out in our next video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this AI-decorated historical horror with your friends. Until next time.